Hello and welcome to a very short introduction to 3D in ARCSCENE. This video is going to be parallel to a longer Swedish video intended for the GIS teaching at the Department of Geography at Uppsala University. And for those students that are not as sort of fluent in Swedish, this English shorter version is there as a sort of support to the visual material in the Swedish one. So, welcome aboard. In this short video, we're going to make use of data from Gotland and the surroundings of Visby to illustrate how an elevation raster could be used for three-dimensional modeling. So what we do is I've got this one called height 2 meters, which means elevation 2 meters resolution. I drag it into and the material, which turns out to be the wrong one. Sorry for that. I go for this one instead. There you go. This material shows the coastline of the city of Visby, where we got the city down here. In order to make it easier to see what we've got, I'm also going to drop things like roads, and we've got this lot which is buildings and all the houses and homes of various parts of the city. Eventually I'm also going to give you the water material. Let me see if we can get it here. The MW shows you the surface of the water table. So these are the ones we've got. As you can see at this level, when I do this, it's just flat space. We haven't told the data how it's being spatially organized. So what we need to do first is to set first the scene layers. If we're going to exaggerate the vertical sort of settings or not. And I've actually, in my case, seen that 2 meter or 2 times exaggeration is very good, because you could see the heights much better. So I'm going to go with the 2, and that will be it. The next step I have to, because it's still very flat, because I haven't told the software which layer that defines height. So I'm right-clicking on the height, which is height in fact in Swedish, the elevation layer, and I click Properties and go for the base height. And the only raster file available is in fact the raster file we've got in here, so we've got no other one to choose, but we can choose that the height is in the Z, which is the value itself of the 3D raster. So if I pick that one and click OK, but before I do, by the way, I go to the rendering and I set it to a low number, which means that the prioritization, if we're going to look for sort of video renderings and updates, is going to play to let this part of the material have a lower position in the hierarchy, because it's sort of just the height, it's not the material on top of it. I click OK, and it has to think a little while, and in the meantime it's recreating the surface. And for those that noticed that before we had roads and things, those are now gone, and that's because we've told the material that we've got 3 dimensions. And here you could see that beneath the homes and the roads and all the other layers are not resting on top of the surface, they're actually resting sort of on sea level. So we have to assign them the same kind of height, and we do it with the same fashion. Properties, right click, base height, floating on the custom. And I redo it for the other layers as well. I don't need to do it for the water for very obvious reasons. But this one I need to do. I'm waiting for it, and there we go. So the buildings and the roads are now on top of all these things. I can in fact also, when it comes to the buildings, and here's something I didn't do for the Swedish material, I can do what is called an extrusion, which means that all the buildings might have a height. I can do a classification and make the buildings in various heights depending on what variables the houses keep, but in this case I'll make them one fixed value, and that will be 5. So each building will have sort of a 5 meter height to them. So one is the thinking, and we can zoom in and see in fact that the buildings are elevated 5 meters, and that will make it easier to depict space. Right. So what else have we got? We've got one interesting thing, and that is that we've got a file called water, and the water in fact is absolutely nothing. it is just a flat area, and because we did this, I'm taking out the other water. So we've got a lot of sort of void space, which is just simply a shapefile that has got 4 points in each corner, and it's elevated to 0 meters above the sea level. So what we're going to do in an animation is that we are going to rise the water table so it sort of floods the city and makes it interesting in that kind of a fashion. In order to do that, we can do it manually, and we do it like this: property, and let me wait before we zoom in so we can actually see the effects. I think that's much cooler. So I do right click on water, do properties, go to Baysides and place a number there. Use a constant value or expression. If we say 25, move this aside and press that extent, because it's unfortunately Swedish buttons, you can see that everything beyond or below is being sort of blocked out. So the water is pouring in. Now it's a graphics problem, so it depends in fact how I zoom in and out, which is a bit annoying, I must admit. We'll see it later in a better sort of animation feature. So I return to the more manual, the automatic way of doing it, because I don't have to deal with these kinds of questions. So I go put 0 on the value and lower it back. For some reason it's still not there. Well, there you go. That's odd. However, we're going for the thing called animation, and we do a create sort of an animation manager. That's what we're going to use, and I make sure that I've got a layer as selected, and I do create, and I choose the water layer, the ones we want to raise, because we can the layer we choose we can then change and alter. And I click new, which means that I've got one sort of destination track, and I've got several keyframes. So think of this as a movie recording where you've got one shot, but you've got several scenes. So I click create and create and create and create and create. So I've got a few different sort of keyframes to which I can change the values of things. And in this case, I'm going for a soft increase of the Z values. I'll go for 10 meters, the next one will be 20, the next one will be 40, the next one will be 50, and then I go for a whopping 75 meters. Almost everything is gone, right? And I click close. And now I can go to the animation control. I go for options, I look for the time, and instead of having time 10 seconds, I do it 20, so we really can see what's going on. And we are zoomed in a good fashion, and I'm going to press play, and you can do it once forward or loop forward and reverse, which I think is interesting. So I press the play, and look at this. It is rising the water, and eventually it's reaching sort of the top, which is not, you see a very little sort of whitish section in the house, and oh, almost everything's gone, and now it goes back. And this is the way we can keep doing things. When we are happy with the result, we could simply stop the animation and go for an export animation, and we can export it as an AVI file, which in turn could be uploaded to any kind of YouTube or whatever you want to do to show the progress or the things going on in a 3D setting. That was all for this time. Thanks and welcome back.